Hello everybody, CountMRVHS here with another Let's Play campaign for 4th Age Total War Dominion of Men, and in this one, we are going to see what we can do with the Dunlandings. Now the Dunlandings are, to me, one of the more interesting groups in Middle-earth. They occupy this sort of middle ground between the men of the West, the elves, the dwarves on the one hand, and the servants of Sauron, the servants of the Dark, the orcs, the Easterlings in Sauron's service on the other. The Dunlandings are a faction for whom you can sympathize a great deal given their history. Now certainly during the War of the Ring they came under the influence of Saruman and fought against the Rohirrim at Helm's Deep, but certainly in the books, the way the Dunlandings are presented there, it's hard not to kind of feel bad for them. You get the sense that they were deceived. They were told tales about the Rohirrim eating the flesh of the dead. Saruman no doubt whipped them into a great deal of fear and frenzy prior to that war. And in their long history, it's again hard not to have a bit of sympathy for the middlemen, that is, the people not of Númenórean descent. Even insofar as they worshipped the Dark, that you get the sense that they did so out of ignorance, not out of any fanatical desire to do so. Now this mod, of course, is set in the 4th Age of Middle-earth, so we're looking at 356 in the 4th Age, so that's centuries after the events of the War of the Ring. What is Dunland up to now? Well, they occupy a very similar territory, but as you can see, they have taken some ground that would have fallen to Rohan. Certainly the outpost of Dol Baran, which is how the mod imagines Orthanc and Isengard. Again, if we look at this here, the Treegarth of Orthanc, it is no longer a fortified, walled place. The Ents did a pretty good job of destroying those outer fortifications of Isengard, but the fort here, the outpost of Dol Baran, essentially commands this territory, as well as the fords of Isen. But more meaningfully, perhaps, down to the south, we have Dun Freka. The name here is a callback to Freka, who is one of the central figures in Eorling history, going back to the days of Helm Hammerhand. Freka was one of the lords who had mixed Dunlanding blood. He commanded some territory, well, right around here exactly, near the sources of the river Adorn, and Helm killed him with his bare hands after an insult had been offered in his hall. That slaying precipitated a pretty impressive war during the invasion of the Long Winter. This invasion saw Dunlandings, as well as Freka's son Wolf, and allies from as far away as Harad in Corsair fleets, helping the Dunlandings drive out the Rohirrim, capturing even Edoras itself, at least for a season. However, that seems to have been as good as the Dunlandings ever had it, and they were quickly driven out, defeated, and they seem to have always been the underdogs in conflicts. But now in the 4th Age, we're imagining that with the civil war that has broken out between the reunited kingdom and its splinter group, the Kingdom of Adunabar, after the emergence of this shadow cult that Tolkien writes about in The New Shadow, all of that conflict would offer Dunlandings some opportunity to expand again and perhaps attempt to seize power that they never quite achieved in 3rd Age. Now, all that said, what are the goals for this campaign? If we take a look at our objectives, we need to hold 40 provinces in all, including our starting settlements, and Hornburg and Edoras. So these two settlements need to fall, but other than that, we've got a lot of scope to do what we want here. And so for that reason, I thought it might be fun to try something a little different. Now, typically with Dunland, what you want to do is quickly invade into Rohan, grab Hornburg, grab Edoras, and knock out the production capabilities of Rohan. Get a nice border along the Anduin, perhaps, leaving maybe a buffer state, or leaving Aldburg potentially between you and the reunited kingdom, and then maybe working your way down in the west into western Gondor, and then ending up perhaps somewhere around Dol Amroth, while potentially moving north and having your borders up around the Grey Flood here. That might get you your 40 provinces or so. And while that is a pretty good plan, and I believe that's roughly the strategy I outline in my guide for Dunland, which you can also find on the channel, I've done that before, so I want to try something a little different. And one thing that I've always wanted to do is sort of recreate a hillman empire for Dunland. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, hillmen are sort of a core feature of Dunland as they are imagined in the mod. You hear about hillmen at the Battle of Helm's Deep, and they seem to be described as fairly large and strong. The hillmen do not represent the entire population of Dunland, but they seem to be an important part of its warriors. It makes sense to imagine that they would hail from the hills alongside the Misty Mountains, and they probably have some ethnic composition that is similar to that of the hillmen of Rudour, who we hear about much earlier in the Third Age. So in other words, there may have been this continuity of culture, of even ethnic background, all along this range of mountains in terms of men. So what we're going to try to do is drive north. So in my view, creating a hillmen empire would involve taking some of those territories. That means going up along certainly the western side of the Misty Mountains, grabbing the provinces that would make up Rudour, maybe even going up to Angmar, and basically getting all this territory adjacent to the Misty Mountains while holding off our enemies in the south. But there is one other reason to head north, and that is Dunland is one of only 2 factions in this mod that can recruit Orcish units. The other, of course, is Adunabar. If Adunabar remains cultic, it can train orcs, wargs, and trolls of various types. Dunland is more restricted. No trolls, no wargs, but some decent options in terms of Orcish recruitment. However, Dunland does not have the advantage of Adunabar's proximity to orc holds. Adunabar, of course, begins with territory around Mordor and in the far north around the old lands of Angmar. These are places with plenty of orc holds in the mountains, and of course, to train orcs and other beasts, you need to get those places. As Dunland, we do start off with 1 orc hold in our neighborhood. It's actually adjacent to our capital, right here in the foothills of the Misty Mountains, the province's Dunland reaches. We can get up here, fight off the orcs for the stronghold itself, and then, if we turn cultic, we can recruit orcs out of here. But that's only 1 settlement, and making a lot of orcs out of a single settlement is usually not the easiest thing to do. We would have to go pretty far afield to get orc training out of Mordor, but if we go north along the Misty Mountains, there are a few holds up here that we could use. So in a nutshell, that is the goal for this campaign. We're going to take Hornburg, we're going to secure our borders to the south, we're going to drive north as much as possible, capture orc holds, turn cultic, and unleash our hordes of hillmen and orcs upon an unsuspecting world. Now, it's just the first turn, and so scripts and things haven't kicked off yet necessarily, but Dunland starts off with a very healthy economy, and that's one that we can maintain for most of the campaign. Dunland's troops are surprisingly cost-effective, and so we can have lots of large armies relatively quickly at relatively low cost. But still in the early years, we will want to be careful, so let's take a look at our diplomacy screen. So we do start off with an ally in the Kingdom of Adunabar. This is a military access and trade right alliance. We're already at war with the Reunited Kingdom and with Rohan, as you would imagine. The Reunited Kingdom is a war that I really don't want to fight. They do have a presence in the north, of course, and I don't mind fighting them up here necessarily. But in the south, in Gondor proper, they are very strong and they can train and send lots of units up north to trouble us. What we need to do then and make a priority is establishing a southern border. And I think that the way to do it, the easiest way to do it, is just to besiege Arendal with this army that is conveniently stationed right nearby. You can see we've got a decent mix here, I guess. We've got Riders of the Eisenmarch, which is our best cavalry unit. Dunlandish Bowmen, this is our only long-range archer unit, apart from orcs and maybe 1 or 2 other special units. We've got Hillmen, which are scary, which do a war cry, which are effective against armor, and only cost 50 upkeep. Astoundingly cheap. And then Wolf Hunters, one of my favorite units in the mod going back to the new Shadow days. Again, a war cry, again, fear. These guys are not effective against armor, but they throw javelins. They've got big 2-handed swords. They're daubed with blood. They're just very cool. So we'll besiege Arendal, which should be garrisoned by, I'm afraid nothing too fantastic, Gondorian hillmen. And we're going to take this, and we're not going to hold on to it. I'll show you what I mean a little bit later. But the next order of business is to get the Hornburg. I'm going to take the Hornburg, and we're going to halt. We're not going to go further than that for some time. The reason for that is the AI in this game pays close attention to borders. And although if we have the Hornburg, they could theoretically march right past us and take this fort and our capital settlements, they probably won't. And that's because the only way to access those settlements would be to pass through the province of Westfold, which is commanded by the Hornburg. The AI is typically not going to leapfrog over your settlements like that, And you could say that's a flaw in the AI, or you could argue that, well, it might not make sense for them to leave a garrison settlement in their rear, so they're going to focus their attention on trying to take the Hornburg back. Now, in this campaign, we're going to be doing, I'm sure, a lot of fighting, both offensively and defensively, over this settlement, which is great news because the Hornburg is a entirely custom-built settlement by Webba84. He built this for one of the later patches of the mod, I believe, giving this a unique appearance to bring it in line with the lore, what you read about the Hornburg's defenses being, and it's just a very fun settlement to try to defend, as well as to assault. So for the first turn here, I've done the usual stuff. That means bringing every settlement down to low taxes. That's a way to increase your faction leader's authority stat. Here's our faction leader here. He's the High Chieftain of Dunland, but you can see his authority is nothing. Well, that's going to actually begin to display once I click End Turn here. But keeping low taxes everywhere will contribute to a higher authority, which has an effect on how loyal or how supportive his family members are. We've also brought pretty much everybody out, and we're bringing them south and east. They're going to be heading towards Rohan. We've started some building in Anghall. I do want to get this built up a little bit. We do need walls, but I'm not too concerned about attack from Tharbad to our north just yet. The other place I've started building is the outpost of Dul Baran. This is a fort, and as such, it does not have a lot of building options. But one of the things you can do is get going on your garrison line of buildings. These are going to give you a little bit of growth. They're going to give you a little bit of trading income eventually. And at the highest tier, which is only, I think, 3 or 4 buildings away, you can actually train a few very low-tier units just for garrison purposes. It's a nice little mechanic, so we like to get them going so they can be as productive as possible. In Dunfrecka itself, I've got a governor here who I want to keep as a governor. He's an adept governor, which is just about as good as you can hope for as Dunland. Your family members are typically not terribly inspiring or skilled. But this guy will keep here. It's fitting. He's an Eisenmarcher. That is going to give him a bonus to troop training costs in the form of a discount. And extra command versus Northmen. So we may at some point see him fighting some Rohirrim, I guess. That does hurt his income tax collection, but I think that's not such a big deal. We will be training stuff out of the Eisenmarch, or out of Dunfrecka, rather. So we'll want to keep him here, and having a nice loyal governor there is going to help. We do have another useful governor who's also adept, and I'm bringing him right over to our capital, Dunhold. Now, speaking of our capital, though, we may want to consider changing it. Currently, we're making 662 in the next turn, but I bet if we change the capital to something like Dunkriok, yeah, that goes up by a couple hundred, so 889 just for having it in a more centralized location. We've trained up our first emissary and sent him north. We're going to see if we can get a trade deal with Tharbad. I don't know if they'll pay us for it. Let's see. All right, we'll ask for 3,000. And they'll accept. Okay, very good to know. I don't suppose they'd be interested in an alliance. Alliance for 4,000? No, that doesn't surprise me. Tharbad initially doesn't have any allies, but nor does it start with any wars. So they'll probably be eventually attacking the rebels that surround them. We've got some time yet before they start attacking us, I would think. And northeast of our capital, you can see an Orcish army here. It's about a half stack in terms of units, but it looks very full considering the banner strength there. Can't see any of the unit types here. There may be some trolls. I can't quite remember. But we will want to get this at some point. There's not a rush on it, though. This army is not going to leave its territory to attack us. Down near the fords of the Eisen, Rohan has been very hesitant to do anything. They've gathered up a couple of loose stacks, and they've got a very... It has to be said, this is a very strong army. 3 or more Riders of the Mark, a couple of units of Rittermark spears, and some very strong infantry, too. You don't want to underestimate Rohan's infantry arm. This is a pretty balanced army. If it was led by a family member, I'd be much more worried. But still, I don't want to go into the plains, into their territory. Since they seem to be hesitant to attack us on the bridge, I think what I'll do is bring an army around, and we'll set up somewhere in their territory on favorable terrain. I don't want to besiege Hornburg yet because that would be a nice flat battle for them to come around and do a great deal of damage with their cavalry. Okay, now we've got a full stack on their territory. But we also have this army here, which is now just a half stack. So rather than leave them here, I think what I'll do is we'll step right into the trees here. It's actually going to be an ambush zone, and we can now bring our reinforcements up from Dunfrecka. We'll leave the family member inside. We'll train up an extra unit of tribal spears here, just so we have a nice 100 for garrison. And now we've got basically 2 full stacks to run around in Rohan. Very interesting. Rohan is not taking the bait at all. They're having none of it. It looks like they went back and garrisoned Hornburg with some of those units, but I don't know where the rest of it went. Possibly down here. But, you know, this does open up a really irresistible opportunity. I'm not sure if they'd stick around, but if I take my full stack and hit this army outside Edoras, yeah, they're going to fight. Okay. So we're going to have a battle far more deeply into Rohan's territory than I was expecting to have this early in the campaign. So this is a crossing battle. We've got a single crossing right here. And you always want to check to see if there's a second one. I'm not seeing one on this side. And, geez, it doesn't look like there's another one up here either, though it sometimes is hard to tell. But I'd say we've got just the one crossing for now. So we are attacking. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to entice them to come down off the hill and try to cross towards us. But the enemy army has, let's see, Riders of the Mark in this force. Rittermark spears. This is a pretty intimidating unit, actually. And they've got some horse archers. They also have several infantry units, though these I'm much less worried about. The levies of Rohan, not too much of a concern. Axes of the Mark are decent. Farther back, though, we were not able to take a look at these before the battle started. Looks like there is another unit of Riders of the Mark here. Another unit of horse archers. And then, oh, Meduselt Guard, I think. This is a unit that encourages its nearby allies, and just a very cool-looking unit as well. So they're going to be pretty formidable. You know, we've got a lot of ranged units, so I think I'm just going to start with that. Let's bring all of our axemen up. We'll set them up right here. We're going to follow that up with our spearmen, because I imagine we're going to be facing some counter charges. We've got pikemen as well. Now, there are horse archers in this army again, so that's, you know, there is going to be a concern that some of our units are going to get shot up. And the pikes in particular are vulnerable because they've got very little armor and no shield, as you can tell. Most of our units, though, are just going to be terribly vulnerable to missile attack. We've got some Dunlandish bowmen, so we'll bring them both near the crossing. And then we've got 2 units of Chieftain's Guard. So here's one of them. When they're not the commanding unit, they can war cry, so that's actually a pretty nice benefit. But these units are effective against armor as well. So your bodyguard unit, although it's infantry, is actually very solid. Here we've got the wolf hunters. We'll bring them on a little bit later, I think. And then the hillmen as well, the Dunlanding hillmen themselves, with those armor-crushing maces, war cry, just a very solid unit. But again, like all of them, we're going to want to kind of protect them, because they are at risk of being run down in a cavalry charge or just shot up. All right, I think we're going to want to use a fairly deep formation here because if those cav do charge, they're going to do a ton of damage to us. All right, we're close enough now to do some spear throwing. And those are having some effect. We'll see if that'll get them to charge. I'm doing a lot of damage to Axes of the Mark, actually. This is great. A lot of Dunland's units have throwing spears, which makes them much more dangerous than you would expect. These axemen also have war cry, so there's a bit of versatility there, but it's kind of tricky to use them. Alright, here comes the enemy. It looks like they're getting in position to charge. We've basically destroyed their infantry line. The Axes of the Mark are going to rout. Levies of Rohan probably going to flee as well. The thing I'm curious about is if this army's going to stay put or if they're going to try to run back to the settlement. To encourage them, maybe what we'll do is rush our spearmen forward. Maybe get the wolf hunters around the flank. Let's war cry all of these axemen. because now we've got the Meduseld Guard coming in. I'd love to take care of this unit. Bring our general around. Oh, and they're routing already? Wow. Not expecting that. All right, chase him back to the city walls. Meanwhile, our other cav is taking care of these fleeing units as well as some of their cav, I suppose. All right, here they come. Riders of the Mark charging in. Let's get our other units up here. Horse archers in the back. I'm not sure if they're going to stick around or if they're going to be a problem for later. All right, let's war cry our hillmen at least. We'll throw them in. I think the wolf hunters are going to do pretty well even without that war cry. Oh yeah, we're chopping the horses down pretty nice. Wavering already. Riders of the Mark are losing heavily over here. Riddermark spears, though, doing very, very good. None of these units are very good against cav. Let's run the hillmen up, and let's run the tribal pikes over. What? Oh my gosh, the king is dead already. Okay. Well, I wasn't that attached, to be honest. I hadn't gotten to know him yet. That was rather unexpected. And now we've got this full unit of Chieftain's Guardsmen. Alright, let's capture that unit. If we can get the Riders of the Mark here not to flee, that would be great. You know, what I've been neglecting is the archers. Let's bring the archers over, see if we can get those horse archers. Everyone else is fleeing, though.
This is no longer a battle. This is a hunt. No, a coward chase.
Alright, we've only got these Riddermark scouts. Looks like they're going to close in. They're actually, they're not fleeing. Okay, there they go. They're routing, though.
Now hunt them down.
We're going to do a lot of damage with our spears, with our javelins. The wolf hunters are going to be throwing spears pretty soon. Our archers are able to hit them. Although we don't have any cav, I mean, I'm just really amazed with how well we've done. All right, so with that last unit routing, I'd say we've just about gotten it, with the exception of losing our king, which I'm still not sure how that happened precisely. I'd say that was a rousing success. Yeah, Hrotha of Dunland. Well, I mean, he did a service for his people anyway. New king crowned Sheld of Dunkreok. Okay, he's the new ruler. He's the commander of this army over in the west of the Westfold. Fair enough. But now we can just walk into Edoras. Okay, I have to say, I was not expecting to do this quite so soon in the series here, but we'll absolutely take it. I'm going to lay Desolate. We'll lower the taxes and destroy what we can destroy. Now, looking ahead at what we can train here once we get this place built up sufficiently, at the first tier, we can get Rohan Spearmen Levies, which is just a very basic garrison-type unit. At Tier 2, we start to get some cavalry, actually, Rohan Spear Levies. No shield, this is a very light unit, but it is decent on the charge, and so that actually is very useful for Dunland. Tier 3, we start to get our basic stuff, Tribal Spearmen, Dunlandish Hunchmen. That's the skirmisher unit, by the way. And at Tier 4, we get a much fuller complement of our native recruitment in addition to this assimilation unit, Vassal Riders. Which is basically the Riders of Rohan, or the Rohan Riders unit. They've got javelins as well as spears to use in melee. So some interesting stuff if we get this up to the highest tier, which I do plan to. Now, if you look very closely, you may notice something a little different about our initial setup. I'm talking specifically about alignment here. At the very beginning of the campaign, the outpost of Dol Baran was not showing as cultic, it was showing as Ways of Darkness, like all of our other settlements. If we take a closer look at the settlement details here, we can see that, in fact, it is officially aligned to the Ways of the Shadow Cult now. What is causing that? And where are we getting this 10% buildings from? Well, if we look at all of our settlements, we will have that 10% building to the Shadow Cult. There we go. In Dunfrecca, we'll see it in Duncreoch. 60% here because the regional building is giving us 50 anyway, but we get an additional 10. And then in Edoras itself, although it is currently Ways of the West, there is some cultic alignment going on here. This is a special thing for the Chiefdom of Dunland alone. When you take Edoras, you do what Wolf accomplished once way back in the dismal years of the Long Winter. You sit on the throne of Meduseld yourself, and the idea is that that sort of encourages the cultic feeling throughout your territory. This is represented as a building bonus, so when you check the settlement details scroll, that's where you want to look for it. And it means that these forts, which otherwise have no buildings that offer them any alignment status, will automatically flip officially to the Ways of the Shadow Cult. The reason that's important is because Dunland is one of several factions that can switch alignment. Switching alignment will switch your unit availability at the military buildings where you can train your stuff. So if we look at our capital, for example, and go to the highest tier of military development, we'll notice that we have two different lists of recruitment. We've got our native recruitment, which we're currently getting. This is stuff like our tribal spearmen, huntsmen, axemen, and so on, all the way up to the Axes of the Wolf and Chieftain's Guardsmen, once we build that last level. But if we flip over to the Shadow Cult, we're going to get some different stuff. We will get still our low-tier tribal spearmen, huntsmen, axemen, bowmen, horsemen, and so on. But instead of pikes, wolf hunters, axes of the wolf, we're going to get spears of the shadow, swords of the shadow, and axes of the shadow, all in some sort of brownish red Dunlanding colors. These are very different from our native units, of course. Their defense is much higher, as is their upkeep, and their unit size is typically quite a bit smaller. But these units are going to be very important as we start to go up against tough factions like the Reunited Kingdom, let's say. Those cultic units are only available when we officially flip our faction to the Shadow Cult. And the way you do that is by making sure you have a majority or a sufficient number of cultic temples in your settlement relative to the other alignment buildings in your settlements. For example, in Dunhold, our capital, right now, the alignment building is Trials of Blood. This is a Ways of Darkness alignment building that gives us lots of different bonuses. However, if we wanted to go cultic immediately, what we would have to do is destroy this and then rebuild cultic temples on several of our settlements. Since we only have 6 settlements currently, we might only need to do this a couple, 3 times. But basically, you want to get a majority of your settlements officially flipped to the Shadow Cult in order to convert to the cult. And the reason why this is a little more impactful for Dunland than it is for Rune or Harad is because unlike those other 2 factions, as I've mentioned, we get orcs. But we only get orcs when we are a cultic faction. So we will need to flip if we want to make any use of this orc hold and all the other orc holds that we plan on capturing later in the campaign. Taking Edoras then and getting that little extra 10% of cultic devotion throughout our territory is going to make that process a little more easy. Now, I've said that we could destroy our alignment buildings, our Trials of Blood, and so on at these starting settlements, but I'm generally not a fan of that. First of all, those initial Ways of Darkness units are super helpful. We want to have those tribal pikes. We really want to have the wolf hunters. Those units are cheap. They're very effective, especially early in the game. However, as we expand, we'll turn Edoras cultic. We will turn Hornburg cultic. We will take other settlements like Greyholm and Southgard Fort and so on, and we will turn those cultic. And at a certain point, we're going to reach that critical mass where we can convert and flip over to the dark side. Well, now with Edoras taken, I'm a bit at a loss as to what to do with Sheld, our new High Chieftain of Dunland. I could, I suppose, move him down to the Hornburg and put it under siege. But again, I'm a little concerned because they've got a family member in here and they've got several tough cavalry units, and that other largish army is, I think, still unaccounted for. We do have a scout here. We've been moving him around. I'm going to give it another turn or 2 to see what Rohan does, and then we'll take him out and start picking some fights, I guess. Well, I've looked around and I can't find a big army of Rohan anywhere, so I'm going to go for it. We're going to take Sheld of Duncreoch, our new High Chieftain, with this army here, and we're going to besiege the Hornburg. Of course, I don't expect we're going to be fighting a lot of ground troops, but we do have a significant proportion of cavalry here. And actually, I'm wondering, Dunn here, what kind of governor is he? Yep, okay. So very fitting, helming us. And actually, Rohan has not moved to attack me at the Hornburg, which means we can assault. Well, we haven't finished building all of our siege equipment, but the AI is going to let us do this. We've got 2 rams, 2 siege towers. I think we can try it. Well, here we are before the gates of Helm's Deep. Let's take a closer look at what we're up against here. We're definitely going to rearrange this stuff, but here are the 2 main approaches. One, of course, this is the ramp leading up towards the only gate in this settlement, the Great Gates here. We won't be able to get towers or ladders up here, only rams, so that gives them an advantage. They can basically get up on top of the walls with archers and shoot us with impunity. But over here, the deeping wall, right? This wall stretches from this side of the mountain all the way to the other walls of the settlement, and this allows us to, I guess, place 2 or 3 ladders or siege towers in our case. We've only got a couple, but we'll be able to place them here, and then we can follow a winding road up in the back there, which connects with the citadel at the top. And you can see that we're going very close to the mountains, and down in below you've got the other buildings of the settlement. Up here is the central plaza that we'll have to capture in order to take the city itself. And there's a tower up there. And off to the off in the distance, down to the southeast, I guess, you can see those dwarven structures. These, of course, would be the entrance to the Glittering Caves, the gates of Aglarond, where Gimli and his dwarves had a small colony at one point. I guess at this point in the 4th Age, we imagine that they're not going to be actually hanging around, but there is just this nice touch of dwarven architecture here. So let's get our guys all set up and see how the defenders have disposed themselves. With that all done, we've got our 2 ram units just as far up the ramp as we can begin. We want to make sure that one of these rams at least is going to make it to the gate. And I can't remember how powerful these towers are. We've got our most numerous unit, the tribal spearmen, with a decent defense, I guess. They've got that big shield and all, but we just need something to carry it to the walls, and I don't mind these guys taking too many losses. Over at the deeping wall, though, we've got Dunlandish axemen, because I expect this is going to be somewhat contested. So let's actually start the battle here. Oh, there's actually nobody on the walls here, but there are some cavalry. Okay, interesting. We'll see if they stick around, and if they do, I do have some spearmen or pikemen we can rush over there. But let's get these guys heading right up towards the gate, where it looks like there are some archers. Yep, they're already firing at us. What else do they have here? Yep, Axes of the Mark at top. And inside the plaza itself, Rittermark Bowman. That's a heavy horse archer unit, a very cool looking unit as well, with a sword as a secondary weapon in addition to their bows. And then Riders of the Mark inside. The Helmingus I don't see, however. Where's that general unit? I guess he must be down here somewhere. Yep, right there. I just love the look of this unit. But we're going to see. Are they going to try to go all the way back up that long winding street to get to the plaza? Well, even if they do, it still kind of makes sense for us to get some units here, just so that we can attack the enemy in the plaza from 2 sides. Otherwise, we're just going to be throwing them straight in, and that's not optimal, of course. We want to be able to capture these towers, though, because they can shoot both forwards and backwards. Of course, we will also want to get rid of these bowmen and these Axes of the Mark, but it's going to be really important to find hopefully a relatively safe place from which we can launch our attack. And we're already taking a lot of damage, so 100 men in these units down to 67 in one, 70 in the other. Yeah, so a lot of damage from those bowmen. And actually, our spearmen are close enough that we can actually throw against at least those axemen up there. The angle's not going to be good at all for us, but I'll allow it. We'll give it a little bit of a chance. All right, both of our siege towers have disgorged the soldiers. We'll send them to capture these couple of towers and then move up on the inside. All right, we've busted open the gate. It looks like the cavalry are moving out to shoot us the better with their bows. I don't really like the odds of going in, though, now. I mean, we've got the Helmingus up here. They are winded from climbing the back path there. We've got a lot of fresh cavalry, and they just overwhelm our spearmen. We'll leave them here for now. We'll get them on fire at will, do some damage that way. But I also am a little reluctant to bring up reinforcements, at least via that path. What we'll do instead is we'll send our men up here. Oh, and they're coming down to fight us, actually. I didn't notice that. Rittermark spears are attacking our Dunlandish axemen. Okay, we're going to need to get that support over much more quickly. Usually I don't see the AI do that. They stick around in the plaza for the most part, but I imagine we're going to lose this unit. Let's get our reinforcements over here. They can at least get a spear throw in, war cry. From the tower, we've got some wolf hunters coming. A couple of units, some tribal spearmen as well. Maybe we'll bring the pikes over here, actually, because I think this is going to be the way for us to go up the back route. But yeah, those Rittermark spears are just tearing through our axemen. Actually, we want to halt you guys. Do a war cry. And we're in melee anyway, so let's throw in. Meanwhile, all of our tribal spearmen have fallen in front of the gatehouse. I didn't really make any effort to save them. They're just there to soak up extra arrows. So we cost Rohan a few arrows from their Rittermark bows, from their bowmen of Rohan. But we want to make sure we've got a nice path going up the rear before we try a frontal assault. Now, we did get those axemen routed. There's 18 Rittermark spears left, 17. We are making somewhat of a dent. But as you can see, they're an extremely strong unit, even when they're not charging. We've got our wolf hunters coming, though, to support. Let's get them on fire at will, along with the axemen. All right, and they're charging in at the units that are still assembling. Well, it's not a charge, more like a stroll. But let's see. We've got the tower now, so that may be firing at them. Or are they going to just retreat back up the hill? That might be the smart move, actually. Well, that'll give us a bit of a breathing room. We can sort of get our pikemen over here, get other units around. We've got our wolf hunters almost all the way up, and it looks like those Rittermark spears are coming out again. We'll see if they can hold on. We just did a war cry. We're going to maybe get a throw in, but they're going to be down amongst us. All right, we're starting to take him out. Awesome. Taking a few losses ourselves. But I think we got this. At least this unit should be taken care of. Now, they've got plenty more inside. But this is a good start. All right, fantastic. Celebrating that victory. Let's bring them up a little bit closer here, just so any other cavalry don't get a chance to form up. All right, got a little bit of a camera issue here. Rohan spears are losing heavily, though. This is a unit that we can train, or a version of it eventually. But you can see they've got no shield and much lighter armor. Now, they're going to do okay just because they've got numbers. 46 men, they're outnumbering us. They're actually starting to pile up some casualties on us. Well, I'm not sure if we're gonna outlast this unit. Now, they're fighting valiantly, just down to one man before he routs, but that's the end of them. Still, we took out about half of those Rohan spears. That's a pretty good trade, I think. All right, I think it's time for people to run. We're down under a half hour, and so we need to start putting a bit more pressure on from multiple quarters. Let's lead with the Dunlandish huntsmen. We're already under fire, though, from the towers, from the bowmen. Let's bring the huntsmen up here. Everyone is going to be off skirmish. Okay. We've got mercenary Dunlandings here. These are more of a skirmish unit as well. The archers can go up the hill. And then we've also got these units. We've got hillmen, we've got a couple more units of wolf hunters, we've got our chieftain's guardsman. I'm a little concerned about sending him up there, but you know what? Let's begin it at any rate. We'll throw in. We've got our pikemen here, we've got our other infantry units moving up the hill. Now, as soon as we enter here, we're going to get swarmed, so we're going to hang back and throw. And I think everybody else here, we're going to run. The archers are going to be drawing the fire, but everyone else is going to run up the hill, including the general. All right, we're getting a bit of resistance here just inside the gate. Our huntsmen are going up against levies of Rohan. They're going to be winning easily. Really not expecting anything different there, but let's halt our wolf hunters, halt our hillmen, and everyone's going to do a war cry. And you know what? Let's bring our cavalry, because we took care of that one unit of strong riders. Let's see. We'll go with the wolf hunters, I think. They'll go after the levies. They might do some good against them. Our other infantry has actually already gained the height here. Our pikemen are going to take a little while longer, but we'll bring these guys over, make sure they're on fire at will. Set them up something like this. This is going to be extremely messy. We've got our general in here. Let's do a little horn call here. Oh, and there's the king himself, right there with the very nice horsetail crest, I suppose it is. He's getting right in the thick of it. Very vulnerable, of course, and we're already seeing some attacking over here. But we're going to cut down these Rohan spears. We've got some tribal spears of our own. That's where the Helmingus are going to go, though. Unfortunately, they're going to get a nice flank attack on us. We'll bring up our other infantry as soon as we can, but we need to cut through these guys first. Looks like we are driving the enemy from the walls, in the sense that they're being invited to come down after us, which is, of course, they are. All right, we're facing some tougher units now. These levies of Rohan are pretty low tier, but the axes of the Mark are decent. We're getting our riders of the Eisenmarch in. Axes of the Mark are losing heavily. We've got wolf hunters who are doing a pretty good job so far. And over here, we're just holding out against those Helmingus, which are a very formidable unit. Our tribal spearmen are losing heavily. Our axemen down to just a single man. He's going to be gone in a second. All right, pikemen are finally ready to move up to support, but I don't know if we've got enough. We've got a lot of cav to cut through. Riders of the Mark, Rittermark Bowmen, and Bowmen of Rohan, an infantry unit, and all those Helmingus, 35 of them. All right, so here's what I think I'm going to do. We're going to run up and capture these towers. We're forcing back the last bit of infantry. Should be taking care of them pretty quickly. You can hear the ballistas firing at us. All right, we've got it. We've got all this area cleared. Pretty soon we're going to be capturing the gatehouse. That's going to make life a little bit easier for us. All right, gatehouse is ours. Let's make sure we get all of these towers. All right, the pikemen I actually want to reserve for the cav, but it's a little tough because we're kind of hemmed in here. We are throwing javelins, however, at those riders. So let's just throw everybody in. Rittermark Bowmen, just 18 of them. They are a very decent unit. You can see them using their broad swords here. More worried about this unit than any other, I think. We've got Riders of the Mark, 48 of them. Bowmen of Rohan are coming in to assist. I don't think they're going to be too much of a factor here. Those Helmingus are going to probably cut through our pikemen pretty easily. All right, let's capture this last remaining tower. There's the Riders of the Mark. Let's get a war cry going and throw the king in. Is he going to make it? Still a lot of bowmen to contend with. And this is all of the forces we have at the moment. Alright, we technically command the plaza, at least for the moment, just because everybody's out fighting. I don't know. This is not looking good. We've got helming us down to 31. We've got the towers. We command that. I've got my general up here too, or at least I thought I did. No, he's fighting. Fighting Riders of the Mark. They're down to 9 men. Bowmen of Rohan down to 9 as well. Well, if we can cut them down, we might just get the helming us. Let's see. I'm going to shoot in their backs with these Dunlandish bowmen. Macemen are doing fantastic, actually. Only 3 bowmen of Rohan left. 25 helming us, and we've got a lot of pikes. Of course, this is not an ideal matchup. Well, I'm going to hang back and let the archers do their thing for a little while. Keep the Dunlanding mercenaries up there just in case things go really, really bad. Yep, here we go. Looks like they're turning to face us. Let's get a war cry going. Charge in with the hillmen. I think I want to keep the king back a little bit. Let's bring these pikes over to the plaza. That'll force them back into it. Are they trying to recapture the towers, though? Or are they just going after our bows? Well, they're suffering ballista fire on their own currently. Hillmen are going to charge them in the back with those maces. We've got the plaza. If we can hold it just for a little while longer, we've got this wrapped up. Bring the High Chieftain over. Helming is down to 11 men. Let's see how these hillmen are going to do against them. Well, maybe not too good. It's hard to tell exactly how we're killing these people. Is it us? Is it the towers? Helming us are wavering. There's the captain right there, the general. Let's do a little horn call for any units that might be able to be brought back. There we go. You know what? Let's continue. We owe it to them to continue the battle, I think. I want to take this guy out legit. We're going to cut him down. By legit, I mean hitting him in the back with a rock on a stick, basically. So we finally did it. I honestly wasn't sure about this one. Yeah, slim victory for sure. A huge part of that, of course, is the terrain, just the fact that you're fighting uphill. And they had some very nice units and a very, very solidly entrenched position. So now we have to set about trying to hold this place. Well, it's nice to have this one taken, although it was at a tremendous cost. Yeah, we'll lay desolate here. We want to get that red face down to green. We'll go with low taxes. And then we'll destroy all the stuff that we can destroy and see how we can possibly get reinforcements in here. Because as you can see, the issue is that the Westfold borders the West Emnet. And so Entwade, this settlement, commands all of this territory. That means we can expect an attack on Edoras or on the Hornburg. I don't know if the AI is going to prioritize one over the other, but both of them could certainly come under assault. And Sheld of Duncreoch, our new High Chieftain, made it out of there with just 6 men in terms of his bodyguard. So an absolutely brutal assault. But we do have some of these tribal spearmen. Some of these units have recovered. As you can see, it's not very much. Now, I think we've got enough over in Edoras that if Hornburg comes under assault, we can bring this garrison over to hit them in the back. So I think that's how we'll play it. We're, of course, going to want to get Edoras going on Outland Dominion. That's going to be very expensive, but it's going to bring in a lot of money. These settlements, as you might imagine, are very wealthy. And so if I want to take one more settlement here in Rohan, it's probably going to be Entwade, just so that I can have more control over what's coming from the east. I don't even know if I want Aldburg at this point. Maybe I'll take it, destroy everything, and leave, let it rebel, let Rohan take it again, build it up, rinse and repeat. I don't want to get down here because this borders a Dunabar. I think a Dunabar starts with this settlement. And if they don't keep it, then it's probably because the Reunited Kingdom has taken it. So I don't really want to share another border with them. So this is going to be just about the extent of our border to the east with Rohan, with this exception. But I would say that makes a pretty fitting point for us to end this first episode of Dunland, the Hillman Empire. We've made a pretty good start here, gotten, of course, into Rohan quite a bit more than I expected. We're still got to deal with Arendal when we come back and figure out how we're going to settle this southwestern border, and then determine how and when precisely we're going to move north. We've got some rebel settlements to our west. We've got Tharbad, so far a peaceful trading partner, to our north. But that peace is definitely not going to last. And of course, if we want to train orcs to turn cultic, to begin that turn to the dark side, then we're going to have to take this settlement as well. But all of that will await in future episodes. So I'm thinking at this point, in terms of scheduling, we're looking at a once a week for this Dunland campaign. I'd also like to keep up this concept of Wainwriter Wednesdays, where every Wednesday we're going to have a preview of our mod Wainwriters in some form or fashion. That'll be probably just a very brief video and overview of some feature, something about the campaign map, maybe a custom battle, just looking at units, who knows, a lore discussion, but something regarding Wainwriters every Wednesday. You can look for other episodes of this campaign, our Dunland campaign in the 4th Age Dominion of Men, on Saturdays. But until the next one, everybody, take care.